Catherine Dunn, everybody. So we're going to do a little quick Q&A, and I promise I'll allow you to ask some questions, but I have so many. So Catherine has spent her career amplifying voices often erased from mainstream narratives, from AIDS crisis to LGBTQ rights and systematic injustice to the complex intersection of art and activism. In this film, you bring us into this journey of a painting of Faith Ringgold's For the House of Women, which tells such a bigger story of who is seen and who is silenced and what liberation really means. And before, as I kicked off the festival, we talked about erasure, and we talked about, these are the kinds of stories that we need to see and we need to understand and we need to be impacted by. So thank you for your work. Incredible. So I'm just going to start out with, I think everyone, I don't know if everyone here in this audience, I'm just going to say that I would have loved to have met Faith Ringgold. Oh my gosh, yes, thank you, what an amazing force. And one of the things that we are doing in this festival is screening films about people who have done this incredible amount of work that we don't necessarily know about, right? So we know Faith as an artist, but did we know that she was this activist and that this was this whole story behind the work that she did in Rikers Island? So I'm curious, just to look in general, what sparked this? How did you even get connected to this story? I mean, you are a social justice filmmaker, and so I'm just really curious. And we did give you a mic.
No, but we can share.
Well, there's
Okay. Yeah, there's more. You can take mine.
for right now.
I'll find mine.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you here and to thank Lisa and this whole festival. And film festivals are everything for us. COVID was one of the hardest times for everyone for a lot of reasons, but one was that we had made these movies and we never got to see the people who saw them and hear what they thought about them and see if it made them cry or smile or go and do something in the streets. So I know there are a lot of places you could be. There's a lot of horrible things happening right now, a lot of places that need our energy. So I appreciate you being here and I appreciate you supporting this incredible film festival that has been around so long. And Lisa did tell me, yes. And she did say every year, she's like, I'm not doing it again. So I'm so glad she does. And look at all these people who also are really glad. To start with answering just that question, and well, I do want to say that Mary and I are very rarely apart at the Q&As, and I wish so much she could be here, and so does she. She's on that residency, which is amazing for her. And that's why she can't be here. She's a total rock star, and I will try to channel a few of the things you would say, but you did get to spend some time with her. And the other thing is that she is starting in the fall a MFA at Temple in sculpture, and they have never before admitted someone who didn't have a BA. So she's the first one coming in, and she's killing it, and she's feeling really good about that, and they're back in Philly, and things are great. And if you saw her here, she just is beaming and happy and doing great right now. And to start with that, when you say, oh, we know Faith, but we don't know her activism, the sad thing for me really is how few people know Faith. So even starting there is that, I would say to people, making this film, we're in this film with Faith. And they're like, Faith Ringgold, I'm like, Faith Ringgold. And they're like, who's she? And it's like mind-boggling to me, and in that way, I'm really glad that not only did we get to spend time with her, but she got to see the film right before she passed. We went up to her house in New Jersey, and my editor and my producer and Mary and me, and we showed it to her and Michelle, her two daughters, Michelle and Barbara, and everyone got to see it. And I have to say, she loved it. It's a film that shows her partly, part of the importance. She has such a deep importance, but also she was like, wait, I'm 25. Oh no, I'm 60. Oh no, I'm 40. I'm not.
Because she was so
confused.
So you were editing it. You were like, I'm 65. No, you're talking about
Okay. I mean, we were trying not to, the chronology we were following was the chronology of the painting and not the chronology of the two events. So it was pretty funny because, but it is great that there is so much interview material that we found and then Faith and Michelle gave to us. And thank God that exists because we didn't start filming with her until after we found the painting on her.
But how did you even, like, how did this story even come to you? Did Mary come to you? How did this story even come to you that there was this painting that was basically whitewashed, right, in a prison, complete, like, literally painted over. And so, I mean, I think that to me is a story in and of itself, that you came across this.
Yeah, I mean, it was serendipitous. I was working on a different film, and I was actually in that group of people that went to Rikers with Enoch, who was an amazing commissioner and is now at the Juvenile Justice Department with Governor Westmore in Maryland. And he's a progressive. It happens to kind of go with the mayors, right? So when there's a progressive mayor, a liberal mayor, and they're all Democrats, I guess, whatever. But the fact that Michael, who's also used to work at the Beard Institute, amazing guy, great thinking, he was there when I got whitewashed, and then Vinny was there when we found it. And so I was in that group. It was the day that Bell Hooks died. Helena describes it in here. It was Omicron, it was freezing. We were at Rikers to see some of the programs Vinny was trying to do. And it was so depressing. And someone in our small group, I had very long hair, so you may not recognize me, but I am in the photograph in front of it when we found it.
Wait, can we roll that
But someone in our group, I was really just devastated. The mother of my children went to Oberlin and was close with Bell Hooks, so we had become friends, and so losing her was also a big deal. And it was just a terrible day. And somebody said, to cheer Kat up if you show her the faith ringgold. And he was like, what's a faith ringgold? And so we went looking for it, and nobody knew where it was. We even got to Rosie's, it's 10 jails. The women's jail wasn't on our itinerary that day. We were mostly looking at the children, the young people. They no longer can have 15 and 16-year-olds there, 17, but they can have 18 and 19 and 20. So he was working with that group and trying to make sure that they could have a common area in the day to be together so that they weren't completely separated and isolated all the time. And so that's the kind of programming we were trying to see and support in him. And so we went right before we left, and I was like, well, let's just go to Rosie's and see if we can find this painting. And they were all like, no, all the COs were like, no. And this one, like way in the back, was like, oh yeah, there's a painting. It's down the hall outside the admin office. It's like around the corner.
Was it whitewashed at that point?
No, it was, no, we're standing in front of it there. We walk around the corner, and I said, this must be worth like $5 million. And Vinny jumped on me. He was like, he's like,
She'll take it home tomorrow.
He was like, no, I don't even know it's there. And it's just sitting here like this. Like you can't, that's how it got like that. And actually, if people want to check it out online, there's a funny, well, it's not funny. It's a little video about Salvador Dali piece that was at Rikers that got stolen.
Yes.
Anyway, it's a whole other story, but he likes to invoke it because now he's an art expert. So he's like, yeah, they all get stolen. Anyway, it became clear to me that this story exemplified a much bigger story. And so it became, we started working on it. I thought, a little short about New York, we'll do it for the New York Times or something. And then people were like, no, that's a much bigger story. And then we composed it.
I mean, it's such an incredible way to use art and film as a way, we talk about that a lot at ROX, as a way to talk about these incredible stories, right? And so, as I mentioned before, you're a social justice filmmaker. You have this passion to bring these stories to life, which we thank you for that. And I'm just wondering, so, I think Faith Ringgold was such an influence in so many people's lives, and her legacy is so important. And I'm wondering how, just spending that time with her, how how you were influenced in making the film based on her legacy. I mean, there's Mary who is like incredible, and she was also influenced, but I know as a filmmaker, there are things that you're like, oh, like there's those aha moments, those are kind of just being in her presence that created the movie you did, juxtaposing Faith and Mary. Anyway.
There were so many moments with Faith, in the film when Mary says, how did you do a job having kids and making films? And Faith is like, I don't know what you're talking about. Nobody gave a shit about my artwork. Nobody was asking me to go to a conference. Nobody, it's just, and then when Mary says, she says something about the prison and jail and the carceral system, and Faith says, I know nothing about that anymore. Her brother had been incarcerated, her first husband had been incarcerated. So she had a lot of familiarity, obviously, with it, and she was also an activist. And then Mary said, I just don't know about it anymore. And Mary said, it's the most violent place. And Faith was like, really? Wow. Like, they're both of them, their ability to listen to each other and to realize that they're very different. Mary always says, like, I'm not even a painter. And Faith's like, you're not? Like, she just sort of, but Faith did all these different kinds of art. But for me, I will try to do this really quickly, because what became clear to me is that although I appreciate her, certainly, and a lot of other people's biographies, I don't think those are sort of the most riveting way to use film. And we all have our relationships to documentary. I love documentary. But I do think people need to figure out ways that, like when the New York Times called this a thriller, which we loved, because we were like, we're trying to make a story. Well, Barbara Drummond, the correction officer that is the only reason this painting still exists, tells an incredible story. The film was played in New York. It played at the Film Forum for a few weeks and other things, but 2 weeks ago it played at the Brooklyn Museum, which was a real homecoming. And Barbara was there, and Mary, of course, and Vinny, and Catherine Morris, the curator. And I pointed out that Barbara was sitting in the audience, and she stood up, and the applause must have gone for like 10 minutes. She was. And her name we rewrote, because I said, you gotta say something on the, what do you call it, wall text, museum people? The text on the wall next to a piece. And so the painting was at the Brooklyn Museum, and the wall text said a certain thing. They called her a guard, which they really don't like. She makes a point of telling me all the time that she's packing. And I'm like, okay, she's like, I'm not a guard, I'm an officer. I have, people should call us correction officers. So we had them change it, and so now she brings her friends, and it tells the whole story next to the painting on the wall, which is right. But what I do want to say is that what we realized when we made the painting the main character and really listened to this idea of painting a road out of the carceral system, that was the filmmakers, all of our goal. John Forte, who people may know, Lauryn Hill, and he composed the soundtrack, and he spent a lot of time inside. Jaquan Faison, who made those beautiful animations of a time when there was no media inside. It's moved Mary and I many times to hear audience members stand up and say, I was inside during COVID, and nothing has expressed that to me, and they'll be crying and saying, this is what it was like. Like there's some way that Jaquan hadn't been inside during that time. So there were a lot of people working on it who are involved in the movement, and I kept thinking, the goal isn't to get the painting out. The goal isn't to get the painting out. Like, I know why I'm making this movie, how I put it in words, and it was like halfway through, and we were doing a sort of brainstorming with everyone in the office, on the production team, and I just started taking notes, and I realized there are 5 ingredients, or pillars, or whatever, to having gotten the painting out, and that you can apply those 5 things to getting people out, or to abolition. And in fact, given the time we're serving right now, they apply to anything you might want to change, or any future you're imagining, and I'll do that really quickly. One is the urgency. right? There was 2 weeks until there was going to be a regime change and Eric Adams was going to take over. So they had 2 weeks. We had 2 weeks to get this painting out to the Brooklyn Museum. If people said, you got a year, you got to get everyone out into drug treatment, mental health care, violence prevention, community-based things, you've got to give people jobs and schooling and whatever, but you've got 1 year to do it instead of like, oh, we'll do that someday. Another thing is the community that was represented. It was the commissioner, it was the artist, it was activists, it was philanthropists, it was the museum. Everybody had a role. The mayor's office, the mayor and the first lady, Shirley, everybody worked together, and we have to do that in any movement. The philanthropists cannot make change. The activists cannot do it all alone. The artists can't do it alone, but if you're all together,
that needs to be together.
so that was, and then there was value, which I think is sort of the most important, which I sort of made a joke about earlier, but it's true. Actually, it's insured for $10 million, which I am allowed to say. I made sure that I'm allowed to say that. So I was off by
5 million.
50%. But there was this value, and if we valued the people inside, or if we valued people, we wouldn't be able to put them in cages, we wouldn't be able to take their children on the road, we wouldn't be able to deny them education, whatever it is, right? Like, if we actually valued people, and suddenly when people valued this piece of art, it started moving. The fourth one is a plan. We knew we could take it to the Brooklyn Museum. We weren't just saying take it out of the jail and put it in the street. Like, we're not going to be able to open the doors of the jail. It's not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen. We have to have a plan. We knew we could go to the museum. It had been there before. They could insure it. They could air condition it, and they made it accessible. It's a free, if you want it to be, pay-as-you-wish museum, and it's in a neighborhood where a lot of people and families have to go back and get work to now. And now I feel like I'm very blessed. Urgency of plan, value, community, and accountability, which is that sometimes people, they're like, it's not my job. I'm not going to do it. And people we all do it in all different ways, and everyone we work with and for, and everyone we criticize, nobody's taking responsibility. And Vinny said, I'm going to take responsibility, even though I have COVID. I'm going to take responsibility for this, and so did the Brooklyn Museum. I'm going to take responsibility. And the philanthropy said, we're going to step up. And the artist said, I'm going to do whatever you need. So anyway, sorry.
No, thank you. It is so incredible for me, and I think for people to think about this depth, like the deep thought and thinking and that went into sort of, like you say, it wasn't just about the painting. It was, you did an amazing job of doing this juxtaposition between the women who were incarcerated, shouldn't be incarcerated necessarily in there, and then it's sort of like, we know a thing or two about paintings that get stolen in Boston, but this whole thing about how are we going to get this out of here? It's like, so I can see this thriller, like it's a heist movie, we're going to get Faith Ringgold's painting out of here. And I think that the way that you crafted that between, using that juxtaposition with incarcerated women was incredible, because this was a film about Faith and about her activism and about, her painting being at Rikers Island because she had nowhere else to go with it, right? Which is crazy when you think about it. And then it's sort of like a release for her as well. Like it's sort of like it come home to her. So you are the quintessential social justice filmmaker, and I'm just trying to think about, like, what do you want us all to be thinking about this? How do you want us to express it, to talk about it, to look at mass incarceration? I mean, Rikers, as we know, is supposed to close, and we're not sure it ever will, especially under the current administration. There are 97% or whatever the women in there are there awaiting trial.
And to self-defense.
Self-defense and crimes, exactly. And so how do we take this, what we have just seen and learned about, and go into the world and support or do whatever we can to make sure that these sort of things don't happen?
There's a long list, and I appreciate the question because it is what we want to do. We really want to, we're an impact production company, Autumn Pictures. We're a nonprofit that is very much about the continued work of a project. We have partners who work with us, partners and partner organizations before films even begin. We're not finishing a film and saying, here, like, go glue that for your people. We're saying, what would it need to look like? What would it need to be? And I do think there's a way that we were thinking, how do we keep painting a road out? That painting was not painting a road out in 2021 when we found it. It was no longer doing it there. It's doing much more of that at the Brooklyn Museum. But there was a way we had to keep doing it. They had tried to keep it at the Brooklyn Museum before, but the piece they were missing was, how do we keep working in the jail towards getting the women out? And that's where Mary came in, and one of my, I have many favorite scenes, but one of my favorite scenes is the women at the end standing in front of the painting and having a discussion about the power of the painting. And when the one says, if I'd been able to sit with this and think about it, it might have kept me from being incarcerated again for the 17th time. And then Faye is like, really? Because if I looked at it, it wouldn't do anything. And that's not what Nancy was saying. She was saying, and it's almost mutually exclusive, like an anathema, that what Nancy was saying is, if I've been able to interact with art the way art should be interacted with, if I've been able to sit in a room with other people, if I've been able to revisit the piece, if I've had some peace and quiet and been able to take my time to think and talk to people and come back into it, it might have changed me. And that doesn't exist in our incarceration.
It does not, and so it's very interesting that you say that, because last year we screened Sing Sing. It was our closing night film, and talking about theater and how theater, the recidivism rate of the people that were part of that program, it was like, it's like 2% or something like that. And the understanding that arts and culture, or art does that in that incarcerated system, but yet it's not provided, is painful, because it's true. So she's saying, if you hadn't whitewashed that, if you hadn't covered it, that I might have understood on a daily basis as I'm walking by and seeing it, what it meant to me.
Right. I mean, I think, there's so much, I love Sing Sing too, but there's so much else that can inspire us to do as well, and that's where I think of the film as a piece of art, as well as Faith's work as art, and Mary's work as art. But the Dignity for Women Act is only in, I'm going to get this wrong, I'm sorry, like 27 states. And it's not even enforced in all of those states. And that's really basic humanity for women who are incarcerated all over this country. So we're trying to use it to work on that. And Mary goes around, tirelessly and talks about that and campaigns for it. There's other legislation, but just at this point, what's happening in LA, like detention is incarceration, and just because, men's incarceration is going down, women's is going way up, and of course, the detention center incarceration and crimmigration is going way up. So, we may be seeing certain things in certain places, but it's a whole system that needs to be fought, and it can be fought in many different ways.
All right, I want to open it up for questions. Oh my gosh, that's good.
My introduction to Faith Ringgold was through her children's illustrations of both of her illustrations in children's books, and I wondered if this project might use that painting in a children's book with the story for children.
That's a great question, because I do think of all of these projects as ongoing, and that is one of the things I took from Faith, which is, she was like, okay, nobody's buying these big canvases, I can carry them down the stairs, I'll do something different, but I'll make these pumpkins, or I'll make these dolls, or I'll, she was just like, she kept going, she never ever stopped, and she just used what was around her and adapted it to what needed to be done. One thing that was really interesting is one of our interns who started 1,000 Black Girl books, Marley Dias, and she was working when we were finishing this, and she knew nothing about Faith other than the children's books. And now she's a rising senior at Harvard. She's incredible. And she started writing this piece, which we're going to publish somewhere, about how she felt like faith kept providing new ways of her engaging with the world and learning about the world and finding ways that she herself could apply the politics that she was learning from faith. And she said, when I was younger, the books worked, and now that I have this political outlook and I have these ideas about abolition or whatever, I now find faith again, giving me something else to use. So to me, there's ways to use all the different parts of the way that faith made art. I don't know, it would be a good thing, because I'll tell you, the kids, there's so many children, New York City where I live, certainly, so many children whose parents or aunts and uncles are incarcerated. And Jacqueline Woodson, who's a great young adult and children's book author, who I just made a different film called Meanwhile, if you know. Yes. She's written Visiting Day is one of her books. Like, there is a way that people are able to use books, and it would be a good idea. I mean, they've even made some games. Like, there's this sort of quilt game that you move the squares around. I'm not sure how you play it or do it, but I think it's online. It's like a digital game, right? Have you played it? It's like an online game.
Yeah.
But I think there's different ways to tap in, and so you're absolutely right. So you're putting that in my mind. I will figure out how we can use this painting that way.
I'll play the back, and then, right, yep, nope.
I want to say hi, Catherine. We haven't seen each other since we played softball, Jack and Bishop.
Oh my God! See, these are very bright. Didn't I say?
I feel like you're not
Hi,
supposed to,
Jack.
don't look.
I know, not supposed to.
Look at the sun.
Quick question for you. What was the stubbornness with, having done programming and stuff at Rikers, what was the stubbornness with not the commissioner, but the person in charge of Rikers itself, and not releasing the damn code, like not releasing the painting, like why did you want it
Did you
done?
find out that it was worth
Over it, like,
Well, now,
Yeah, now it's
I mean, it's a great question, and that, I never wanted to challenge or depress faith. But there was this part of me that was like, when they painted it over white, and you took it out, like, just say, thanks, ciao. Like, you didn't do it. Like, why ever? And she would have had every right to keep that empty canvas. She could have given them, $200 and they could buy another 8x8 canvas. But she didn't do that, and I don't know the dynamics of it, and I'm sure they were holding on to it a little bit. But once she convinced Michael and other people who were there at that time to get it restored, and it was fun finding the restorer, although the main guy, the husband, had already died. But they were a trip because they really have like zero politics. But they were just doing the thing. They're like,
That's what they are. They're just restorers. I mean, I think it's amazing that it was water-based. I mean, can you imagine? Like,
it was her last oil on canvas ever.
Wow. And that they painted it over with
With
water-based
like
paint,
water
which is
based
like incredible.
So, but at that point, once they paid, I think they paid $20,000 for it to be restored. I think I saw it on the left. And then after that, then they would, even legally, she could have kept it probably before that. And she did try. She said that we agreed that if it wasn't continuously on exhibit or available to the women, that I could have it back. And they were like, find it in writing. And I did a FOIA because she didn't have it, and I bet they have it, but the FOIA did not unearth it. So, the Freedom of Information Act, they sent us a bunch of stuff we already had. But I'm sure they have an agreement that says she could have had it. But at that point, then now they claim that they own it because they paid $20,000 for it. And what's worse, maybe, but maybe not, is that I think now it's about 3 months ago, because they're making these borough-based jails, so that they can close Rikers. And the Queens Borough-based Jail Art Coordinator, which I don't know what that is, emailed and said, I'd like to start a conversation about getting the painting back. And I was talking to Catherine, the
You
curator.
said what painting?
No, I looked at Catherine and I said, she has not seen the movie. No way. She's getting out
hate that. It's just
no
right.
way. There's no way. So, we'll see what happens. But at this point, I think it's on parole. It's on a 10-year loan. It's already like 4 years in.
Oh my God, it's on parole.
It's on
parole.
parole.
Yes. It's true.
Yeah.
All right, I think we have time for 2 more questions.
Yes, thank you very much for your work, and what does the chairman use, justice filmmaking, is that what it's called?
Social justice.
Social filmmaking, yeah.
For social
Do you see any
justice.
correlation between the issue with European countries that have invading African countries and stealing the art and putting it in the gallery, so they were making money?
Well, that's a huge question. But you're absolutely right, because then once they find out, I know in Benin, there's a lot going on now.
Actually, I'm from, my ancestors from Benin.
Oh, really?
And I make Benin statues for.
Have you seen the film Dahomey?
Yes, yes.
Yes, beautiful film. I mean, I think there is, that's really interesting.
But the thing is,
about that.
whose art?
The thing what?
No, but I was just gonna say that it's a little bit different because they know what they're stealing, right? Like here, no one had any idea that this was a fake Ringgold. No one had any idea that it was worth probably $5–10 million. It was just this painting on the wall. It wasn't until they realized, oh, wait, we let that go? We let that out the door? Whoa, wait, come back with that. But we want it back because we really want it for the women, but I'm not sure that their intentions are.
That's why I said, once they see the movie, they won't take it, because
Right.
there's no way that they are going to put it inside where the women can see it
and feel
and
inspired
have
by
it
it.
insured and with a museum guard all the time, that's not.
Yeah,
They're not gonna do that, so if they put it in the lobby, even there, I'm like, first of all, that's not where any incarcerated or about to be incarcerated or formerly incarcerated women pass. So they would never see
There's
it.
so much impact there.
Who would even, insure it for that?
Right, exactly, to bring it back, and because it really is gonna inspire the women, and it really, yeah.
And we asked for it back, and they said, no, we're not giving it back to you.
I know.
Well, that's what Faith is doing, because it's on parole.
She kept saying, give it back.
Faith wanted it to go back?
No, she was saying, give it
Oh,
back
yeah,
to me.
right, give it back to me,
That's
exactly.
Give me my fucking painting.
It's mine, and it's worth $10 million. All right, last question, I think.
Yeah, thanks so much. Let me know if you can hear me all right.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. This was such a fantastic, beautiful kind of case for abolition, and I think the scene at the end with the women talking in front of the painting was so powerful. It got me thinking, and this might be a really absurd question, but I figured I'd just ask it for the sake of curiosity. If you would ever screen this at Rikers Island, would you, and would you want, how would you sort of do this? What would you want the incarcerated folks to kind of take away from this?
It's a great question, not absurd or ridiculous at all. It's one of our priorities at Auburn Pictures. Not all of our films are about incarceration, but they are all social justice films, and several are about incarceration. And we've had great experience with CDCR, which is the California Department of Corrections. They play 3 of our feature films and 1 short film on rotation. So on the inside TV, the closed circuit television, they alternate films for 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. I guess people are going in and out so much. But they play them, and they are already playing this. So it's in all the carceral institutions, the prisons and jails, I don't know about the detention centers, in California. But there's no way they will play this at Rikers, at least while this mayor is mayor. But if Zoran, anyone, New Yorkers, vote, if Zoran wins, I bet they would play it. And what I would want them to take away is the idea that there's something else. And I think that was the magic of the painting for me when I saw the painting. It was all the things we've talked about. But the notion of beyond freedom, which Nicole, I'm blinking, who did Marking Time, my friend, what's her name? Somebody just said it. Anyway, she made a beautiful book and exhibit called Marking Time, all formerly incarcerated and some incarcerated artists. It started at MoMA, PS1, it moved around, it's brilliant. But she talks about beyond freedom, and that's what Faith was doing without even that terminology. She didn't make a painting of what women could do when they got released. She made a painting that was what all women outside couldn't even do. It was like, what could all women do in this society if we are released into some semblance of freedom? And I have to say, it was a personal hope that the only thing you'll notice in that isn't happening yet. I mean, there were no women bus drivers at the time, let alone everything else, but was women president. And I thought, oh, we're gonna get a women president, and then the picked up film's gonna come out, and all the things would have been done. That didn't happen.
This is America.
Yeah, but that idea of beyond freedom, and that's why I appreciated that last scene with the women so much, is that when Leah, who has done a lot of the Q&As with us too, who's incredible, says, you know, art will meet you where you're at, and this is not what we need right now. This is not meeting us. But there is a version of a painting or artwork that could meet us, and given the fact that now all the role models, all the parents, generations and generations, like that idea of it starting right at the beginning of the war on drugs and war on gangs was, you know, there were not that many people incarcerated. I love when Barbara Drummond says, I didn't even know women went to jail.
Yeah.
Because they shouldn't. That's not a way to deal with anything women are doing.
Right, especially why women are in jail. You're right, exactly, that they shouldn't be in there.
And that's what she was saying. So then when they're saying like, oh, this needs to get updated, that's true. Because now women can, out on the outside, can do all of those things. Something that inspires people to actually, who are inside, who see this film, I would want them to be able to imagine something other than just getting out of prison.
Right. It was, to me, it was just so amazing that Faith went to Rikers and asked that question about what do you want, and that woman said, I want you to paint me a road out of here. I mean, it is so profound, and I think that you have taken this film to mean so much more than that, and we thank you for that. You continue to create stories that do this, that make us think, that make us want to, you know, be better. And so, you know, thank you for sharing your process with us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this film and all the other films you're doing. And we will continue to follow the work that you're doing.